This is Rostra, the St. Theodore Guerin Junior Classical League podcast, where we bring the lessons of classical study into the light for the benefit of all.
So welcome back to another episode of Rostra. We've got Sam Berry here with us. And Sam, start off telling us what grade you're in and what level of Latin you're taking this year.
I'm a senior, 12th grade, and I'm taking level 2 Latin, or Latin 2.
Senior in second year Latin, very good. So I have to admit, let's be honest, I'm excited about all the topics. I started to say I'm really excited about this topic, and then the fact of the matter is I'm excited about all the topics because this is all my stuff, man. I love it. But I really am excited about this topic. There's just so much neat stuff in it. So tell us, what is your topic for this episode?
So my topic is Roman sculptures, and kind of everything that surrounds it. Its history.
Everything having to do with Roman sculpture. And I will say, I think for kind of anybody who thinks about the ancient world, one of the things that may pop to mind is the statues and the sculptures and some of that kind of stuff. So that's a popular image of the ancient world. What have you found out about that?
Well, can you describe more in-depth questions?
Yeah. So you've done a little bit of research on sculpture. So what have you discovered in terms of what have you found? The kinds of things they made sculptures of, or out of what material, or how they did it, or anything you think is cool to share with us.
One of the most interesting things I think was material, is that a lot of us just think it was just the marble, or that's what's just left, but it's actually could have been made of metals, terracotta. There was even silver ones and bronze. So it's just kind of like the material they used. The only surviving ones mostly are in marble. So I thought that was one interesting thing I found about was all the different materials they used to build sculptures.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think, again, as you said, most people, the image we have is of all those white marble statues. But absolutely, that's right, especially the metal. And we have found a number of those, certainly in shipwrecks. Some of it's been corroded over time. But also terracotta. And of course, terracotta is going to break, so you're going to have maybe fewer of those pieces, but really all of that was certainly used. So what kinds of things did the ancients like to sculpt?
They did like to sculpt a lot of ancient Greek sculptures. There was a lot of read that there were schools that would all make miniatures of the Greek sculptures. So they would transfer the Greek sculptures, and then they would make copies of them just to improve their skill. I also learned that what they would do is they would take characters from mythology, and they would put Roman emperor heads on them, or replace the heads to make their emperor look a little bit better, make divine. So that was an interesting thing I found.
Well, there's two things I want to go off on that. I think both those things are fascinating. You talked about the Romans copying stuff from the Greeks. We all do that, right? I mean, think about when you were a little kid and you were drawing stuff, you imitated things that you saw, whether it was in comic books or whatever. We drew other people's stuff and tried to do it ourselves. And I think a lot of people today will even copy the Roman style in art. So that's very, very common. But the other piece about taking heads of the emperors and putting them on bodies and make them look better. Why?
I think it was a lot of the emperors were saying that they're divine, and so putting their head on a demigod or a god from Roman or Greek mythology makes them look divine, or it makes them look like a god. So I think that's where the appeal came from, or the reason for it.
It makes sense when you but here's the other thing: if anybody thinks that sounds strange, don't, because I got two words for you: Photoshop. Right? I mean, is that not exactly what we do?
Yeah, we did do that.
We a lot of times we do it for pranks and silly stuff, but, can you imagine? That's what happens when you record during the school day. We sometimes get a bell in the background there. But you imagine taking some world leader's head and putting it on Superman's body.
Yeah.
Right?
I've seen that.
Right. We've seen that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's the sort of stuff there. Tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about where this sort of artwork would be displayed? Where would people in the ancient world maybe go to find such sculptures?
A lot of them would be like the bigger statues. More of the emperors would probably be out in the open for people to see, like in the forums or the open marketplace areas. They were also used as decorations. So there's like smaller statues that would be inside people's houses, like as like a centerpiece, or just kind of like wall decorations. Those ones would be made of like silver. I heard a lot of them were a lot more fancy or a lot more detailed than the bigger ones. I feel like a lot of it was used for propaganda almost in a way, or just to show how great someone was. Not necessarily like it's a bad thing, but just that's where I saw a lot of use.
Yeah. I think that's, again, there's interesting contrast there. If you think about it, I think for us, if we think about going to see statues, we typically think about a museum. And while we do have some statuary in public parks occasionally, maybe in a state capitol area, things of that nature. But I think there was a lot more public art in the ancient world. And then when you think about art in people's homes, I think most of the time we hang pictures, maybe more than, now occasionally you'll have a little figurine here or there, but I think maybe we do a little bit more with the picture kind of art, where maybe they did some more with the sculpture. So say a little bit more about this word you use, propaganda.
Yeah, that actually kind of brings into one of the things was not whenever we think of like sculptures, we think of just like a individual person, but I found more of like the architectural sculptures. So there's the victory or the triumphal arches in Rome that show the different victories, or like a emperor would build it after a great victory, and I feel like those were kind of spread around Rome, and that was a form of propaganda, like a way to spread the news to people that Rome was doing good in battle.
And I do think sometimes that word propaganda has a negative connotation in the modern world, and some of this, that's appropriate for some of what went on, but some of it is exactly what you said. It was a way of sharing the news. Obviously, you didn't have 24-hour TV, radio, and that sort of stuff. So how do you get out the news that, hey, we won the battle? Well, part of it, you depict it in art, and I like that you mentioned the triumphal arches. That may be something that folks maybe think about a little bit less. When they think about sculpture, maybe they're thinking about a freestanding human figure sculpture. Yeah. This was sculpture too, because these were massive monuments, and you've got incredible artistic carving depicting those scenes. So, any of those in particular that you ran across?
I forgot the name of the first. I don't remember exactly the name. I think it had to do something with Constantine.
There it is, Arch of Constantine, Arch of Titus, a couple of major ones there in Rome. And again, you can still go see those today. We typically don't in the modern age do that, although I've told, and I'm going to put it on record right here, I've told students for years, and I don't know that my wife would let me do this, I said, when I die, I want a triumphal arch. I don't want just a silly little headstone, right? I want a triumphal arch like the emperors of old. So tell us a little bit, and I don't know if you found this in your research, but when you think about those white marble statues, were they all just white marble back in the day?
I think I've heard. I didn't really find that much when I was reading or researching it, but I did hear about like they would paint them. So paint the eyes. I think I saw that in my reading. They would paint the eyes, and it kind of changed back and forth throughout history. But yeah, painting the eyes, clothes.
Bingo, exactly right. In fact, if you want to think about the sculpture of ancient Greeks and Romans, it's not just that pure, pristine marble. Honestly, think about some of the wild, vibrant colors of, say, Latin America. Just really, when we think about Latin American art, we think about really, really cool, bright colors. Man, they painted those statues like crazy, and especially the eyes. If you ever see a statue where the eyes are hollow, that usually meant there was a glass piece set in there for the eye. If the eye is solid, then that means they painted it exactly like you said there. So anything else as we kind of start to wrap up our episode, anything else that you found that you're saying, man, I want to make sure people know about Roman sculpture?
One thing I did find about was the different types of sculptures, or like the heads versus bodies. I read that the heads usually like show the aging of a person, and the bodies usually show like a youthful, strong person. So I found that the heads are usually just for like people, or like ordinary people, be more of like a picture and remembrance, or like a painting. And then the bodies were like again used for like emperors or monumental people in Roman history.
Right, and also kind of really a stock sort of human figure from the neck down, just basic human figure, where the real detail in the face, and like you said, that would maybe depict the aging. And a little bit interesting, I think, if you look at some of those, the face may look a little bit older, and you're like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't match up with those hands very well, because those were just kind of stock pieces. Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna say anything else, and if not, that's cool.
I think that's probably about it. Just the material, what they used it for, and then the heads for his bodies. I think was interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, and of course we've got a few little Greek and Roman busts in the room. So just the head and neck portion, but clearly a major feature of ancient Roman life. Well, Sam, thank you for being on the show. I think folks have learned a lot from that, and we look forward to exploring this topic more in class.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Rostra. You may check out all our episodes on Spotify and follow us on social media at GuerinJCL. That's at GuerinJCL.